Okay, so we are now live and I'm starting the recording. Proceed.
This conference is no longer being recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome everybody. Today is Monday, July 27th, 2020. It is 3:03 p.m. and this is the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners meeting, which I will call to order. We are still doing our meeting due to COVID-19. I see both Commissioner Hall and Commissioner Hunt are here, so we do have a quorum in place, and we did a sound check earlier, so we should be able to hear everybody. First up is the adoption of our consent calendar. Christy, if you can kind of slowly scroll so we can, it's a pretty large consent calendar. Thank you. These are items of a routine nature that either commissioners or staff can pull for further discussion or information. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion. But Wayne, I think maybe there was one you needed to pull off, or are you okay?
No, I'm okay with the consent calendar. It's later on the agenda.
Okay, all right.
Reports item B that needs to be pulled from the agenda.
Yes.
That's correct.
Reports under B is pulled to the agenda and probably moved till next week.
I move for approval of the consent calendar as presented.
And I'll second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, motion carries. Okay, keep scrolling, Christy. Next under reports, I believe our first report, as usual these days, is an update from Lincoln County Public Health on COVID-19, and today will be presented by Rebecca Austin, our Public Health Director. And I know, Rebecca, that we are beginning to get a lot of questions around phase 2 and being on the watch list, so I have some information to share on that as well, but I'll let you go ahead and start your update.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is Rebecca Austin, Health Department Director, and I will be brief, just not always the case. But today we have 380 positive cases. We have had 6,407 negative tests, and so far, unfortunately, 8 deaths. We only had 1 new case as of on Sunday, which was a nice little break. And we have 2 potential new outbreaks to be determined yet. So I just wanted to let you know, you may have seen it in the newspaper article, but the trace finding from coming back to Newport for a second round of tests indicated that we now have a positivity rate of 6 for every 1,000 residents, and that is down from 34 for every 1,000 residents. So that's pretty good news. Just to put that in perspective, we ideally would like that number to be about 1 or 2 if we can't have 0 for 1,000. So those are our counts. Some of my concerns are that we all think we're making great strides. And so I just want to caution everybody that because we think this way and we are making great strides, that we will relax our diligence. And if there's one thing that we've learned by watching what has happened across this country, it is that we really need to practice patience. So a trend, a 2 to 3 week at the minimum trend of our number of cases going down will make me feel like we really are making great strides. So we can't let down our guard. We're seeing better compliance with wearing masks and the 6-foot distancing, and we need to continue that practice. Oh, and just a side note from an article I read over the weekend in the New York Times is that as long as we have new people or visitors coming into our county to vacation, that we will be at high risk for further cases. So like the CDC cautions, staying home is still the best way to protect yourself and others from getting sick. And as far as the community report goes, I just want to reiterate that the age group of 20 to 29-year-olds are still by far the most affected by COVID. So that is why we continue to see a low hospitalization rate, because they tend to fare much better with the disease and sometimes don't even have symptoms. But I want to really encourage this age group to comply with our mitigation efforts. Despite their need to socialize, they can do so in groups of 10 or less, wearing a mask and keeping 6-foot distance. And I'll take any questions that you might have.
No questions from me. I have some information I'll provide kind of about phase 2 in the watch list, but Commissioner Hall, do you have any questions for Rebecca?
Not at this time, but I would ask maybe, I'm hoping if your schedule permits, if you can stay on the line with us for at least a few more minutes in this discussion, because I want to hear what Commissioner Jacobson has to share today. And, I don't know where my fellow commissioners are at, but given the increased level of, interest in when we're going to be ready to move to phase 2, if we can just, if we can speak as one voice in like, we will not do it until such and such targets are met or such and such trends are met, that if, I'd like to have that discussion today if you both are in favor of it. And I really think Director Austin's input would be hugely helpful in informing that discussion.
I will definitely be here until you dismiss me, Commissioner.
Okay, Commissioner Hunt, any questions for Rebecca?
Yes, I believe you've reported, and I know it's been an issue as far as timeliness on tests, and it was taking about 14 days or longer to get the results on tests. So my question is, if you look back on the the positive tests over the last couple of weeks, on the surface it looks very positive, or at least certainly positive. But how much of that is a reflection of the fact that we weren't getting test results at all?
Yeah, that definitely played into it. That's why I say we need another 2 to 3 weeks to really see what the trend is going to be. And we are still, our trajectory is still pretty far behind what we would like it to be with our test results. So, and we're, the state has determined that all long-term care facility staff will be tested every month. And so that is something we're working on right now to see if we can get those tests done by a lab that's not Quest, because they're the ones that took more than 2 weeks to get the last results back. So, that is an ongoing issue, bringing new testing platforms onto the market, new labs opening up that can do the testing. So that's just a constantly changing environment there. So yeah, we would not want to rush into anything right now, any changes. We need to keep buckling down.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, the information I have is a couple of different things. One is that we are still on the governor's watch list, unless that changed in the last hour, but we are on the governor's watch list, and in order to get off the watch list, there are 2 different metrics that we need to meet to do this, and I got this information through Sarah Means at the governor's office last week, because I think all of us maybe last Monday were a little confused on what has to happen. So we cannot apply for another phase until we're off the watch list. And the 2 metrics are: 1, you have to be on that watch list for at least 21 days, so minimum of 21 days. By my math, that 21 days was Friday. And then the second metrics is over a continuous 14-day period, you have to have 50 or less sporadic, i.e. community spread cases per 100,000 in your population. For Lincoln County, that's about 25 cases over a 14-day period that are community spread. So you have to have less than that. So those are the 2 matrix we have to meet to get off. OHA monitors that directly, and they will take us off the watch list when we meet that criteria. We do not have to apply to get off the watch list. They do that directly. I do know that last week at Governor Brown's press conference, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, don't quote me on that, she had mentioned that there would be updates to the watch list in the next few days. So I'm assuming we'll hear pretty soon on updates and our status. Additionally, I know that Representative Gomberg is reaching out to the governor's office today to ask some additional questions and get some clarity on where we're at with that. So that's kind of the first barrier to phase 2. We have to get off the watch list. And then the second thing is currently we actually don't meet the phase 2 criteria to even apply, or I should say we don't meet all of the phase 2 criteria. So I'm just going to look at it right here so I can talk from some notes. So last week when we looked at that criteria with Nicole before she left, the criteria that we were not meeting was % of cases in the last 7 days with follow-up within 24 hours. That was the one criteria last week. We were not meeting. I think we were 1 percentage point away. We are actually meeting that criteria this week. However, the % of cases not traced to a source in the last 7 days, we have to be below 30%. We did not meet that criteria in the last 7 days. So we're down in that, and then trend in % of tests that are positive in the last 7 days. We should not uptrend. We are uptrending 1.9%. So we still have those 2 barriers to overcome, as well as getting off that watch list. So that's kind of the update. I know I've been receiving a lot of emails. Why haven't we applied for phase 2? Well, we currently don't qualify. And again, first barrier off the watch list, and then we need to be meeting all 6 of these health measures in a 7-day period. I should say there's one of those that's a 14-day trend, but the rest are 7-day period. So that's kind of currently where we're at with that. And I guess Commissioner Hall, you had kind of this item that you wanted to bring up. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the information from Director Austin and from you is really helpful. People are, I'm finding, and I think we're all experiencing it, concerned, frustrated, the lack of clarity on some of these things. It's frustrating to them, and in some ways frustrating to us until just now, it was not 100% clear to me that we could not apply for phase 2 until we're off the watch list. I would say that makes sense, but I have hesitated to say that in public, without an absolute verification, but you have now provided us that. So I don't know, based on what I've heard from you and from Director Austin, I think, it seems clear to me that we really can't have any kind of meaningful discussion about phase 2 now because we're not eligible. And, I heard a few people say to me, well, you're almost there, but, being close, as what was the wise person who said, only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. This isn't, getting 5 out of 6, 5 out of 7 gets you there. You would have to be on every one of these particulars anyway. And then even when we are eligible, I think we need to have the same kind of thoughtful discussion we've had all the way through, that just because we become eligible, maybe it's time to move forward. Maybe as we consider the larger picture, we continue to be cautious. I just don't know, but that's my initial takeaway from the discussion so far.
Okay. I guess the one thing I would say is, it's difficult for me to have a discussion about what we want to do when we meet criteria, because I don't know when we would meet it. So it's hard for me to kind of have that, because I'm not sure, where we'll be, if that's next week or 2 weeks from now. And I just don't know. But I will say, in having conversations with staff, and specifically Council Belmont, who has been kind of the keeper of our applications, I know that he is keeping our application up to date, so that because we have had a lot of positive changes since we applied to phase 1. So in addition to all the criteria I just read, which are the health measures, there's also criteria around number of contact tracers, a number of bilingual contact tracers, and personal protective equipment that you have to have, as well as regional hospital capacity. And there's been substantial improvements made, especially at the county level. We have way more contact tracers than we did when we opened in phase 1, and way more bilingual contact tracers than we did when we opened. And so I know that Council of Belmont has been keeping our application up to date, so that, you know, hopefully when it is time, filling out the form is not the barrier if we decide to do that. The materials and the information that we have to provide as a county, you know, is up to date and ready to go. And also that we can reflect all the, you know, increases in staff. And we also have to provide kind of information on hypothetical scenarios. I think the two we used last time on phase 1 was an outbreak at a seafood facility and an outbreak at a nursing home. And now that we have done both of those, we can reflect those, not just to be hypotheticals, but also, you know, show and highlight the work that we have done and how we will continue to do that as we move forward. So I know that Council Belmont has continued to kind of update those materials to be reflective of the changes we have made, staffing and that kind of stuff. So that, you know, if needed, or when needed, I should say, when needed, I'll be optimistic that hopefully those are not the barrier.
Madam
Wayne?
Chair,
Yes.
I'm
good.
sorry, I just wanted to emphasize one point you've already made, but I've heard this from at least a couple of people. Well, why don't you have the application ready? But as you've said, staff at our direction actually has had a phase 2 application ready since before the phase 2, since before the Pacific seafood outbreak, and they have been updating it regularly. So as you said, filling out the form is not the obstacle. When we collectively decide that we're ready to pull the trigger, it can happen very quickly.
Yeah, Council Belmont, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's you actually summarized what we've been doing on a staff level. But I do want to note, I think just for your information, I know we've talked about this quite a bit, but of course there's been changes over the course of the last 2 weeks on the statewide level too. We have actually seen more restrictions and more guides been put in place on a statewide level across the board. Doesn't matter what phase you're in. So we've got, the new limitations on gathering size and indoor social get-togethers. We've got actually some reductions across all phases from the large size of 250 down to 100 in all phases. The face covering requirements have now been extended to children, also to indoor exercise. Restaurants, no matter again what phase you're in, have to close at 10 o'clock. So what we're really seeing happening now on a statewide level is restrictions that are applying across the board and really ramping things down. So your decision, whatever you make and when you make it, will have to be made in context of what's happening on the statewide level too.
Yeah, that's a good point, Wayne, because in the past, we have seen things, I think it was maybe slightly before 4th of July or something like that, maybe more earlier in June, I don't remember, but we were in the middle of our outbreak, so the timeline's fuzzy, but we had a statewide freeze, and anybody moving to any phases, I think that was for 7 days or a week or something. So it is possible that there's some state things that that come into play as well. But I also would say there's some state things I think that have come into play, like the statewide mask order, that hopefully have been helpful in preventing spread. The other thing I just want to point out is Rebecca Austin had pointed out earlier that our OSU trace testing did show a decline in prevalence, and that testing was mostly done all done in the Newport area. But I just want to say that that is just really positive that has come down. And I want to just say a huge thank you to all of our public health staff and CB nurses, because it's their ability and diligence in containing outbreaks and cases that allows that number to come down. And it is because positive cases have intervention and contact tracing, and that's why we saw that. So that success in bringing that number down was both for the individuals with COVID staying home, And I'm in contact with others, but also in our public health staff in containing that. So just a big thank you to them. Commissioner Hunt, anything you wanted to add to the discussion?
Yes, I have some thoughts. Number one, I think, well, certainly based on the conversation that's already taken place, we're not in a position to apply for phase 2 currently. And when you enter into a discussion as to when will be, it's hard for me to say when I would be comfortable, simply because it's already been said today that the rules, the regulations, the virus itself is constantly changing. So the parameters that might make me feel comfortable currently may not even be applicable in the future. But I think that generally speaking, I'm looking at trends. And as a former banker, I'd have people come in and give me one set of financial statements for a year and say, well, it's a great trend. Well, no, a trend takes a period of time, and what the trend is for the virus, certainly 2 weeks is too short. I'm not sure a month is long enough, but I think it would be clear when the trend is starting to move in the right direction, which right now I don't believe it is. Also, when you look at COVID testing outcomes by county, we are the 6th highest in the state. We have 78.9. This is directly from the state OHA COVID-19 site. We have 78.9 cases per 10,000. And as I said, that's 6th highest in the state. The statewide average is 40.3. So we're about double the state average as far as case count per 10,000. So that is certainly an area of concern. And I've heard it said, and I'll use the metaphor, it's kind of like jumping out of an airplane. You're in pretty serious danger until you open the parachute. Parachute slows your descent and gets things under control, but that's not the time to take the parachute off. And so I think we need to continue to be diligent in our efforts to slow the spread. From the very beginning, I've been a proponent of proceeding slowly. Our county opened before the Memorial Day weekend. We had an outbreak. We were scrambling to address the outbreaks. We just had a 4th of July weekend. And as Director Austin already indicated, we really don't have a clear understanding of what kind of outbreak or cases have been identified as a result of the 4th of July weekend. We continue to be a tourist attraction. As the director said, that's high risk because people will continue to come into our county from outside the area. And Labor Day weekend is not that far away. And again, an opportunity for groups to get together and create an environment where the virus is spread rather readily. So those are some of my areas of concern as I look to the future. I think that patience is needed by all. And I also will echo your comments, Chair Jacobson. I appreciate the hard work and dedication of not only the county health and human services, public health staff, but really all of the people that are working in a coordinated effort to try to slow the spread and make sure the safety and health of our citizens and the people in our county are maintained.
Thank you. Well, I guess for now, seems like the consensus is, since we don't qualify, we just kind of continue to have updates at our meeting and monitor, and hopefully there'll be some clarity provided by Representative Gomberg back from the governor's office on watch list stuff as well. All right, moving on. Item B, financing, capital, and projects and purchases was removed from this week's agenda. We're going to wait till next week till Christina Shearer, our finance director, is able to join us for that. So we'll just move on to agenda item C, update on Georgia Pacific Strategic Investment Program presented by Wayne Belmont, County Council.
Thank you, Chair Jacobson. We have been discussing the agreement that we have put together with Toledo, Georgia Pacific, and of course the county with Business Oregon, which is the state entity which actually handles the strategic investment program. And what we found is, as we were reviewing the agreement with them, they indicated that we cannot use language in our agreement that establishes a community service fee more than 25%. That's the statutory amount that's there. They said as a local condition, we can increase that fee or charge that up to the 35% that we had come to agreement with Georgia Pacific and Toledo, but it can't be included as a community service fee. It needs to be a separate fee. We have been looking at doing something that we call the community impact fee. I've seen this in some other agreements that have been used around the state. So in order to comply with the requirements for Business Oregon, we're going to need to revise the agreement slightly to add in that community impact fee at 10%. And what we would do is actually just have it distributed in the same manner as the community service fee. So since our last meeting, I've also completed the agreement that will be with all the taxing entities that would distribute this fee, and I'm getting that out. And I wanted to first come back to you and report on this before I proceed on getting that other agreement out to the Port of Toledo and the Greater Toledo Pool and Recreation District, so that we can make sure that everybody's on board with the distribution methodology we've got for the funding. And then, assuming that everybody's on board, then we'll move this thing forward for finalization.
Okay, so this was just a discussion item report. So you don't need anything from us today, just information.
Yes.
Okay. All right, questions? Commissioner Hall, questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hunt?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any questions either. Thank you, Wayne. Okay, next, commissioner updates or commissioner reports, excuse me. Commissioner Hall, report?
Well, last Wednesday, I took part in the first meeting of the Senate Bill 770 task force. This task force was created by the legislature last year to study what the opportunities and obstacles would be in achieving some type of statewide universal coverage in Oregon. Yeah, everybody in, nobody out. I think that it's a tall order, and what the legislature ends up doing with our report, if anything, will be interesting to watch. But I am the Association of Counties designee on the committee, and I'll keep everybody informed periodically as that work moves ahead.
Commissioner Hunt, report?
I'll give a brief update. I had previously reported that the Northwest Works and Workforce Investment Board was in a process of hiring a couple of individuals to lead the effort to develop educational and workforce training programs along the coast as a result of the Governor's Maritime Task Force that I chaired. Those two individuals are Kate Frame, who is lives in Coos County, and Francisco Saldivar, who lives in the Portland metro area. Those two individuals are working on developing those programs, but I realized that Rachel Maddock Hughes is also working on the Maritime Innovation Center and has a task force there. So I have got the two groups, if you will, together and developing a coordinated effort as far as developing programs that will enable people to get jobs in the maritime sector, which the task force report indicated are above average and in high demand. So it will be nice to see those two groups working together in that area.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
All right, thanks. A few just quick things on my end. Starting July 1, I was the newest appointed member of DLCD, Division of Land Conservation Development. My first meeting Thursday and Friday, so successfully got through that. It was a huge learning curve for me in reading the packet, but got through the first board meeting of that. Also, along with Rebecca Austin and a few others from Public Health, Several of us participated in a call, actually our second call with the Latinx community last week. This was something that Beatrice Bodello from the City of Newport City Council, as well as one of my former colleagues from Extension, has helped put us together. Mostly the topics are COVID related for now, but the idea is to kind of keep going with these calls to connect better with that community and provide information. So really nice discussion and frankly just problem solving on certain things that are coming up related to COVID. So that was good. And then on a somewhat personal note, I think as we all know, starting on Friday, it is now required to children 5 and older to wear face coverings when they are in public. I have a newly turned 6-year-old, and we have been having him wear a face mask with limited success, lots of pulling at it, taking it off, and pulling it past his nose and all of that stuff on the few occasions he was out. But I want to thank a constituent that actually reached out and sent me some information about how to make one specific for kids using an old t-shirt, what was phenomenally successful. So now he can wear it and it stays on his face. So anyways, thanks to the person that sent that to me. It actually was very helpful in being compliant. And that's all I have on my update list. I guess we're moving now into decision and action items. We have a conflict of interest from Jerry Herbage, Lincoln County Assistant Legal Counsel concerning expected WorldMark land use development application. Jerry.
Commissioners, I'm sorry, Commissioners, if I might, I'm going to actually present this and then you can ask Jerry any questions. So we have had some inquiries and some issues running up about beachfront protective structures under statewide goal number 18. And it looks like we're going to get multiple applications for an exception to goal 18 presented to the county, first to the Planning Commission and then to the Board of Commissioners to consider. And Mr. Herbage, as Assistant County Counsel, has been advising the Planning Commission and the Planning Department for a couple of years now, and he has become our resident expert on this particular issue. But as we were looking at things going forward, one of the applications is likely to be filed by WorldMark. And Jerry provided you a letter that indicated who WorldMark is and what that involves. And Mr. Herbage, actually, he and his spouse own a timeshare in the WorldMark organization. And he's explained that is a company that owns about 92 resorts from coast to coast in the United States and Canada. There are thousands of ownerships here. But that Jerry needs to do a disclosure to you that he owns a couple of weeks of that particular timeshare. But that from his position, it will not impact him in being able to provide competent and diligent representation of the county in this matter. But as an abundance of caution, after discussions with the Oregon State Bar, we felt that we needed to have this disclosed to the Board of Commissioners, and you needed to consent, provide informed consent that you would allow Jerry to represent the county in this particular matter. And my recommendation is that you do that. I think this is really just a tangential connection to the WorldMark Resort. And in fact, we're going to have more than one application in this area from others in which Jerry has no connection. So I don't see this as being a problem or an issue. And my recommendation is that you, after reading the full disclosure that Jerry has prepared here, that you go ahead and authorize him to represent the county in this particular matter. And if you do so, we need a motion and then you would sign the letter that's been provided to you. And Jerry's available to answer any questions if you have specific questions about his interests.
Okay, thank you, Council Belmont. Claire, questions for Wayne or Jerry?
No questions, Madam Chair, thanks.
Commissioner Hunt?
No, I don't have any questions. I think it's pretty straightforward, and clearly I believe that Councilor Herbage can effectively and fairly represent the county.
Yeah, and I did read the letter provided by Councilor Herbage. So thank you for that. And just one thing I wanted to clarify, I think Wayne did say this, Bill say it again, is that in Jerry potentially continuing to be on this case, there's no financial interest, either positively or negatively, for him in being involved in this. And I'm not a timeshare owner, so I'm not well versed in timeshares, but again, my understanding is that it's not necessarily ownership in that particular hotel, but in sort of the brand in multiple locations across the globe. So I don't have any more questions. Jerry, is there anything you would like to add?
For the record, this is Jerry Hervey, and I thank the board very much for taking this up today. I think the letter that I provided explains the situation fairly well. I've gone through the protocol, and I've taken a conservative approach. If the particular rule of professional conduct is 1.7, and it says that a lawyer is not to represent a client if representation involves a current conflict of interest, meaning a significant risk that the representation of one or more clients will be limited by a personal interest of the lawyer. And, you know, I don't feel that that's the case, but I think the conservative approach is to bring it to the Board of Commissioners and let you make the call. As I said, I don't own stock in the company. I'm not on any boards or commissions. There'll be similar applications we expect from at least a couple other entities, and I will endeavor to do my best for the county. Apart from that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But that's the situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall, any other questions?
No, I would be glad to adopt the measure proposed by Council Belmont that would indicate that we want Mr. Herbage to continue to represent us on this issue and on any cases that come before us.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I could just say one more thing. I didn't finish what I was meant to say is that I gave you the rule about the conflict of interest, and I don't feel that it's probably there, but I'm taking a conservative approach. But I can proceed, as you know, with your consent, and that's the second part.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table.
I'm happy to second a motion. I guess I'll question, does the motion cover what's needed, Council Belmont?
I think it does. And just to reiterate, what you're doing is you're consenting to Jerry to represent the county in this matter, and you'll sign the letter so indicating.
Okay, second it.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, is there any other business from commissioners? Commissioner Hall, any other business for today? Nope. Okay, Commissioner Hunt, anything else?
Nothing now, thank you.
Okay, any other business from staff? No. Okay,
No.
well, I guess oh, I heard something.
I'm sorry, this is Council Belmont saying no. Finding the microphone.
All right, with that, I guess I'll go ahead and adjourn the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners meeting. Our next board meeting is Monday, August 3rd, 2020 at 3 p.m. And again, we'll be back in a virtual setting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
This conference is no longer being recorded.